Hi, I'm Stephanie Rublitz. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking overalls. I am really excited for today, but before we get started, I do have to say, for whatever reason, there is a helicopter buzzing around my neighborhood, and I have tried about 8 times to film this without the sound of the helicopter. I don't even know if my mic's gonna pick it up, but if it does, if you hear it, we're just gonna be okay with it because I need to get this video out. So, and I have no idea what they're doing out there or how long they're gonna be. So please be patient. I can hear it coming back. Anyway, we are talking about overalls today. So I have this problem where I ruin all of my clothes, pretty much, doing home improvements and working in the yard. So I kind of thought, wouldn't it be great if I had a purpose-built garment that I love, that will be my go-to whenever I'm doing stuff like that. It will kind of just make me want to get changed to do that kind of work rather than just thinking, oh, I'll just be careful, no big deal, I'll paint that fence, I'll be careful. So that's why we are making overalls today. Now, I do have a specific pattern that I'm going to use. You can absolutely find that pattern. But if you're just making overalls from another pattern, this would still be a good video for you to follow because there might be some tips and tricks in there or some clarification on some of the instructions that are going to come with your pattern. Now, this is considered an intermediate make, but I really feel like the only reason it's an intermediate make is because of the amount of pieces and the amount of steps. If you just slow down and take your time, you will be absolutely fine. Now, the pattern that I'm going to use is from Decades of Style. If you've never heard of Decades of Style, they are an indie pattern company and they specialize in taking vintage fashions and creating new patterns for them. So that's why I'm so excited about this. Because the pattern I'm going to be using is a vintage 1940s overall pattern. So think Rosie the Riveter. Yeah, that's what I'm making today. If you do want to find this pattern, I will link it below. I'm not affiliated, I get nothing. I just think they're cool and I want you to know about them. All right, let's get started. All right, so here's the pattern and there's this reference rectangle just to help make sure that your pattern has printed to the correct size. So this one needs to be 3 by 2 inches, which it is, so I know my pattern's printed correctly. And these are trim pages, so I do need to go in and trim the right hand and bottom edge of the pattern squares. There we go, all trimmed. Now I just need to tape it all together. All right, now I can go ahead and cut out all of my individual pattern pieces. Now, these pattern pieces do have lengthen and shorten lines. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna add my length, but I'm not gonna spend a ton of time going over the whole thing because I feel like you guys have really seen me do that before. So I'll go ahead and add my length and then I'm going to cut out my pieces. Here's my length added. Now I've added a few inches throughout the whole pattern. So let me get rid of these here. Now there's 2 inches added into the bib, and so 2 inches into the facing, that also goes with it. 2 inches into the pocket, which will go on the bib. 2 inches into the strap at either end of the strap. Then I've also added 2 inches into the rise of the pants. And I've added a couple of inches onto the bottom of the pants as well. I might just end up taking that up in the hem, I don't know, but I'd rather have it there than not and risk having pants that are too short. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to cut 2 of everything out of my fabric. To sew the pants together, this pants pattern is a 4-paneled pant. So we're going to start with the back and front side panels. Now you'll see that there is a notch here and then pins all the way down. We're only going to sew where the pins are and leave the top part of it open. On the pockets, we need to reinforce the top of the pocket where the fabric's gonna fold. So I'm gonna put this strip of iron-on interfacing underneath and then the fold will go on top of that. So I'll go and iron that on and then finish the edges. So here I've got my seams finished on my pants and I've got my edges finished on my pockets. Now I can go ahead and do the fold where that interfacing is, and I'm going to fold that down and I will top stitch the top edge, and on the bottom I'm just going to fold it up and I'm going to iron it. Now here is the two panels of the pants that we put together, and we're gonna put the pocket on. There's two notches on the side where the bottom of the pocket goes. So I'm gonna put that on, and I'm just gonna baste on the sides for now, and I'm going to top stitch along the bottom. Here we go, pockets are put on. And you can see the top stitching, I did the same double row that I did on the top. Now we have these like little belts that have to go on the side, and the instructions say to fold 1/4 inch and then 3/8 of an inch, and that your folds will meet in the middle. Now, I burn my fingers every time that I try and do that, so I'm just not going to. I went ahead and I cut extra pieces so that I could use 2 pieces per, and I just sewed them together to make a pocket and left one end open. So I'm trimming them, cutting the corners, and then I'm going to turn those straps. I'm using a knitting needle here to sort of push in the end of the pocket, and then I'm going to turn it around and use the round end so that I don't poke a hole in it. And that's how I turn it around. And now I'm going to use the pokey end just to make sure that my corners come out nice. I'll press that, and then I'll go ahead and stitch it just like this one. Now I'm going to match one of those up with the notch, throw a couple pins in there, and I'm just gonna baste that on for now. There, that's basted on. And the next piece that we need to put on is the front center panel of the pants. So I'm gonna go ahead and stitch that on, and then I will serge that seam as well. So here's the back side of that. We're going to press that serged seam into the center of the panels. And then once that's pressed in, we're going to do some top stitching, which is going to be very similar to what you would typically see on the side of your jeans. So I'm going to do an edge seam as well as a second seam holding that seam allowance, catching the seam allowance in the back. I'm using this special foot just to guide my edge stitching, but don't get cocky. Even though there is a handy dandy little guide in there on the foot, I went too fast, and like the only part of my stitching that I really messed up was when I was using the guide. So it will help you, but you still need to go slow. Now I've got that side all together, so I'm putting on now the back center panel. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to do my seam, I'm gonna finish it with a serger, and then I'm gonna go over and top stitch it the way I did the front center panel. And this is what you're gonna end up with. Now it's time to put the pieces together into actual legs. This is when the fun part really starts to happen, because it starts to actually look like a garment. So I'm just going to pin my inseam together, and I'm gonna run that through the machine, but I'm not gonna serge that the same way I've been serging my seams so far. I've serged them both sides individually so that they can be ironed flat. Now that I have both legs done, I'm going to take one and turn it right side out, and I'm going to put it inside the other leg so that I can match up right sides together the crotch seam. Now that I have that together, I'm going to go ahead and stitch it, but I'm not going to just serge that whole seam. There's going to be something else we do here. So between these two notches, I'm actually going to trim down the seam allowance, and then we're going to go around and we're going to notch the seam allowance. And this is just going to help that curved line really fit our body nicely without bunching up. After I'm done notching this, I'm going to serge that. But beyond the notched part, I'm going to open up both parts of the inseam, and I'm going to serge them separately here. All right, now we can turn the garment right side out, and the whole bottom part is all done. Now it's time to take a look at the patch pocket that is going to be going on the bib. I need to go around and finish all my edges first thing. So here we go. Now, going by the guide that the notches lead me, I'm going to fold that over on with the wrong side facing out, and I'm going to just put 2 small seams just on the edges there. Now I can turn that out, and that will tuck in our sides really nicely. I'm going to use my knitting needle to poke those out so that they're nice and square, and I'm going to fold all the rest of my edges and iron them out. I've top stitched that top part there, and now I'm going to place the pocket on my bib and pin it. and I'll just use a top stitch seam to fasten it to the bib. Here we go. Now I did put 2 seams down the middle to make a pencil pocket, and now we're going to attach the bib. I'm matching up the center and then just pinning out from the center. There we go, all serged. And you can see how beautifully this is coming together. I'm going to top stitch that. Now we have some facing that goes on the back of the bib just to give it a little bit of strength. And you can see I've cut my interfacing here. I do have it in 2 small chunks, but that's just because I only wanted to buy a 1/2 meter. And with interfacing, you can absolutely overlap and kind of piece things together if you need to. Now I'm just going through and I'm trimming off about 3/8 of an inch of that interfacing, and I'm going to press it on. Here we go, I've got both pieces, and now they just need to be attached in the center. Now, with right sides together, I'm going to put on my facing, and I'm going around now, and once again, I'm just notching the curved edges and I'm clipping the corners. And that will allow me to turn it out really nicely. There we go, it's all turned out, and I'm going to go around and top stitch the outside. Before I move on and do the rest of the rows, I noticed that somehow I missed doing the edge finishing on my facing, so I'm going to go ahead and serge that edge, and then I'll go around and do another couple of rows of top stitching. So there we go. I also added, after I did my top stitching, I also added just a small little line here so that when I do use that pocket for a pencil, it doesn't fall all the way in and then I can't get my pencil out. The next thing we're going to work on are the button plackets. Pretty easy. We're just going to fold these in half, and then we're going to run a seam down the wider edge. Now I'm going to cut the inside corners, and I'm just going to turn those out. Once I give those a press, I'm going to go ahead and just finish the bottom edge with the serger. I don't have to worry about finishing that one long edge though, because that will be finished with the seam that it gets attached with. Because these serged edges are not going to get run over by any other stitches, I'm just going to take the time to tuck in my serged threads. Now here we are, we're going to attach the button plackets to the notches that are left from marking our pattern, and then we're going to stitch those out. Now we have facing that we have to put on the back as well. We're going to trim 3/8 inch off of one side of the interfacing, and then we're just going to iron that out. Here we are. After ironing them on, I serged the edges this time. Now we're going to secure those to the back side of the overalls. Now, somewhere along the line, I didn't see in the instructions where I needed to serge this edge of the button placket after I put it on. So before I finish up with the facing on the back, I'm just gonna go ahead and do that really quick. All right, there we go. Now we need to go around these round edges and notch into them the same way that we've done before. Turn in the facing, then I can press and top stitch the same way I did the front. There we go, all top stitched. All right, here we have the straps. Now the instructions call for, once again, folding 1/4 inch and then pressing and then folding 3/8 of an inch. And again, my fingers are just not into that because I know I'm gonna burn myself with my iron. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 1/4 inch, and I'm gonna actually stitch it. I'm just gonna throw a basting stitch in there and then roll it again. So here I've done a 1/4 inch rollover, and I've done a basting stitch. I really don't even need to press it because running it under the foot has pressed it enough. Now I can go in and I'm gonna roll it one more time and run it through with a top stitch. Attaching these is more trickier than I thought. I actually attached it more than once. So one thing that I've learned is that I'm going to mark my seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch, on the center seam that goes down the middle of the back. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want my straps to fold over any time between that mark and the edge of my fabric. Now I need for that mark to be seen, and I also need for my edge to line up so that my outer edge to line up, so that I don't have it looking like the strap is too long. All right, and it looks like that's gonna work okay. There we go, my straps are on and top stitched. Now we have to put on all the hardware. Things are really coming together. This is when it gets super exciting. So we have the 2 straps that we didn't attach earlier. I'm finding that the length that will work for me on my body when I tried it on and did a fitting is actually just half of the strap. So rather than having to do an edge and then fold it over or anything like that, I'm just folding the strap in half and I'm going to attach it that way, and that will cover the raw edge that's hiding underneath. I'm also going to just do a small seam right there so that my buckle isn't gonna move all over the place when it's not attached, just to kind of secure it. Then I'll go and do a square stitch with a cross through it at the end. Now it's time to put the buckles on. All right, so I'm just sewing on the buttons for the buckles. The original pattern just called for buttons with buttonholes, but man, I love those buckles. They're cool. They were my favorite part when I was a kid. Why should I miss out on them now? Now here we go, and when I tried it on, I marked my straps where I wanted the fabric to line up with the edge of the coveralls. So I'm holding that there while I pull my fabric through so that I can make sure that I'm gonna wind up with the right length. Trimming off the excess, now I'm gonna fold that and just stitch it. Now I have to put the snaps on the side. I'm doing a bit of a different snap style than what is called for. I'm using these sort of more industrial snaps through the whole thing. The original pattern called for a button and then like 3 hidden snaps underneath it. But I just like the look of these better. And so what I'm going to be using, you can see there's a back stud and socket and a front stud and socket. So make sure that you don't mix those up. Now I've pinned my 2 pieces of fabric together where they're going to be snapped. So I can just run my awl through both pieces of fabric, and then I know that I'll be getting my snaps in the right place. I kind of just worried the holes a little bit with my seam ripper, and then I use a knitting needle to help guide my posts through. And then I'm going to use this little snap setting anvil, which you can buy where you buy your snaps, and then a tool just to hammer in the center. And there we go. Snaps are all in. Well, there we go. That is my very best Rosie the Riveter impression. I am living for these overalls, you guys. Yeah, I just am. I absolutely love them. I am excited that I have something that is purpose-built for those days that I'm doing home improvements and yard work, because I'm spending all this time making nice clothes for myself. I don't want to be tempted to be just like, oh, well, this is what I'm wearing, so I'll go ahead and paint that fence anyways. So this is what I have for that now, and I'm so excited. If you were looking for a make, like this is an intermediate make, but if you were looking to eventually work into making your own jeans, which can be intimidating because jeans are really fitted, there's a fly, there's patch pockets, there's top stitching, right? There's all the things that kind of like make sewers go, ugh. But this would be a good sort of like step on the way there. You're really working on edge stitching, top stitching, there's patch pockets on here. So go ahead and give this a try if you want to work towards making your own jeans. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Next week we'll be on to something new and wonderful. Do all the things, like, share, subscribe, hit the dingy bell if you would, and I will see you next week.